chosen one. Deep inside, you always knew that what happened wasn't fair. You felt it in your body, in the silence of your nights, in the way they seemed to look right through you, as if your soul wasn't sacred enough to be chosen. But you were never overlooked because you lacked value. No, they saw it. They felt your light. They witnessed something ancient and divine within you, and it confronted everything inside them that was still unhealed, still hidden, still deeply afraid of the kind of truth you bring. When they chose someone else, it wasn't a choice based on love. It was a reaction to fear. Fear of awakening. Fear of transformation. Fear of standing next to someone who doesn't play spiritual games. And instead of rising to meet your frequency, they returned to the karmic comfort that demanded nothing but their presence, not their growth. But the universe was watching. It always is. They thought they were choosing a partner. But what they really chose was the delay of their own expansion. What they ran toward felt easier, more familiar, even pleasurable for a moment. But it lacked the depth, the activation, the spiritual fire that only a soul like yours can bring. While you were grieving, they were performing. While you were breaking in silence, they were posting smiles and illusions. But this world has its laws, and the spiritual realm doesn't operate on appearances. It operates on frequency, alignment, and purpose. And the truth is, they didn't just walk away from you. They walked out of a divine contract, one they never fully understood. And from the very moment they turned away from your sacred presence, a code was activated. A chain of events began to unfold in the unseen, one that will not stop until balance is restored. And restoration, my love, is never silent for long. So if you've been walking through this storm wondering if the pain had meaning, if the loss was just another spiritual punishment, I want you to breathe with me right now and listen carefully. You were not abandoned. You were not discarded. You were protected by a divine intelligence that refuses to let your spirit be mishandled. There is a plot twist rising, not because you wished for revenge, but because the spiritual world is always moving toward truth. And when truth is denied, it finds a way to return. So stay with me until the end of this message, because what I'm about to share will confirm every instinct your soul whispered when no one else believed you. And if this is already resonating with something ancient inside you, write in the comments. The code has been activated. The return has begun. Let's begin. They didn't choose someone better. They chose someone safer. Not because that soul could love them deeper, but because that soul wouldn't challenge them to change. You see, when someone has spent lifetimes avoiding their own shadow, the last thing they want is to be in the presence of someone who carries the light of divine accountability. And you, chosen one, were exactly that. Your very existence demanded truth. Your love was not performative, it was awakening. And that's why they couldn't stay. They weren't ready for the level of self-confrontation your energy initiated. So instead of rising to meet your frequency, they gravitated toward the karmic, a relationship built not on truth, but on repetition. And repetition feels like love to a soul still trapped in survival. What you need to understand is that the karmic bond they chose is not a threat to you. It's a mirror for them. It shows them the version of themselves they still believe they deserve. While your presence reflected their potential, the karmic reflects their programming. And that programming is rooted in fear, scarcity, guilt, shame, and control. They may have chosen that dynamic thinking they were finding peace, but what they actually chose was delay. Delay of growth. delay of truth, delay of alignment. And here's what most people miss. Choosing delay doesn't stop time. It just invites more suffering. Because everything that is suppressed, denied, or avoided in the name of comfort always returns, multiplied. In their eyes, it may have looked like they were starting fresh. But in the spirit, nothing began. In fact, something ended. A timeline, a destiny, a divine appointment. They walked out of something their soul had cried to receive. But the ego is loud, and in the noise of desire, performance, and approval, they couldn't hear the quiet voice of their spirit trying to hold on to you. So they let go, and in letting go, they didn't just leave your life. They removed themselves from a frequency they weren't prepared to carry. But here's the divine irony. What they rejected in you, they will now have to face alone. Because the truth always returns. And it returns louder when it's been silenced. You may still feel the ache. You may still play back the moments in your mind wondering if there was something more you could have done. But let me say this clearly. You were never meant to fight for a space your spirit already filled. You didn't lose because you weren't enough. You were removed because you were too much for a soul still sleeping. And that removal was not rejection. It was preservation. Because the universe, in all its wisdom, will never allow a sacred one to be wasted in the hands of someone who chooses illusion over elevation. So if you're grieving, grieve with the truth. You were not left behind. You were lifted out, and what they don't realize yet is that the moment they made that choice, the moment they rejected what was holy, a law was triggered. Not a human law, a spiritual one, a universal law of restoration that ensures nothing sacred is discarded without consequence. The shift doesn't happen immediately, but it always begins. Slowly, subtly, then all at once. Their sleep will become restless. Their peace will become shallow. Their joy will feel artificial. And the face they chose over yours will begin to feel like a cage, not because you wished them harm, but because you held the frequency that their soul still longs for, even if their ego refuses to admit it. There is no punishment here, only divine recalibration. The universe isn't in the business of revenge, it's in the business of balance. And when that balance is disrupted, everything realigned begins to shake. So what felt like rejection was actually realignment in disguise, a painful detour toward protection. And as that spiritual code continues to unfold behind the scenes, what was once hidden will start surfacing in the open. That karmic connection may still appear strong on the outside, but behind closed doors, the unraveling has already begun. And the unraveling doesn't always come in the form of drama or chaos. Sometimes it begins in the silence, a disconnection they can't explain, a growing sense of dissatisfaction they can't trace, a haunting feeling that something precious was lost. The karmic bond starts to reveal its true nature, not through conflict, but through emptiness. Conversations feel shallow. Affection feels forced. And in the back of their mind, your name begins to echo. Not because they miss the comfort of you, but because their soul remembers the assignment they walked away from. They don't talk about it, but the energy doesn't lie. And when the frequency between two people is misaligned, even the loudest love eventually falls quiet. They begin to dream of you. Not always in romantic ways, but in strange, symbolic, spiritual ways. Your face appears in moments they least expect. A song, a scent, a place they never shared with you somehow brings your memory to the surface. And those moments are not random. They are messages, reminders, warnings. Their higher self is trying to speak, to confess, to bring awareness to the decision that has silently fractured their spirit. Because the karmic choice wasn't just a mistake, it was a turning away from truth. And truth, once rejected, has a strange way of making itself undeniable. Meanwhile, you, chosen one, begin to feel something shift in your atmosphere. A lightness, a new breath in your chest, a clarity that once seemed unreachable. It's not that you're fully healed yet, but the chains have loosened. The pressure has lifted. You may not be aware of it, but your energy field has been recalibrating. Every time you chose not to beg, not to chase, not to return to what broke you, your spirit was reclaiming its throne. What felt like abandonment was, in truth, the beginning of your return. And now, without knowing it, you've stepped into a different timeline, one they can no longer access without transformation. And this is where the inversion begins. They begin to feel drawn to you again, but not from the same place. Not from love, from loss, from longing, from confusion, from the aching awareness that they gave away something that cannot be replaced. And that feeling becomes louder when they look at what they've chosen and realize it was never about partnership, it was about avoiding growth. The karmic energy begins to feel like a performance they're exhausted from repeating, and the performance starts to crack. The applause fades. The mask slips. On the outside, they may still smile. They may still post pictures. They may still pretend everything is fine. But the karmic mirror never lies. It will show them the parts of themselves they thought they could escape. And the irony is, what they chose to avoid in you, the confrontation, the depth, the calling, is now being reflected in even harsher ways through the karmic bond. Because nothing delays growth forever. The soul always circles back to what it denied. And now, the circling has begun. Slowly, but surely, their spirit is being pulled toward an awakening they never expected to happen in this way. And it's not because you reached out. It's not because you tried to prove your worth. In fact, it's precisely because you didn't. Because you allowed the separation to teach you. Because you honored your pain instead of escaping it. That's what changed everything. Your stillness, your silence, your surrender. These are the vibrations that shift timelines. While they were performing connection, you were cultivating alignment. While they were choosing what glittered, you were becoming gold. And now that gold can't be ignored, even by the ones who tried to bury it. Their spirit knows where home is, but they're not ready to admit they're lost. That's the tension they carry now, the longing for something they rejected, the desire to return without the courage to confess. And this is the moment when the real conflict begins, not between you and them, but within them. A spiritual fracture, a restlessness that no karmic connection can soothe, a realization that the plot has turned, and they are no longer in control of the narrative they tried to write without you. And then something happens, not outside, but deep within. A moment of clarity breaks through the fog. The person who chose the karmic path begins to see with new eyes, and what once felt like love now feels like a loop. The patterns become undeniable. The emotional highs and lows, the familiar arguments, the sense of déjà vu. It all starts to look like a rerun of pain they thought they had escaped. And suddenly, the connection they ran to for safety begins to feel like a trap. They don't always admit it out loud, but the knowing grows louder. This wasn't love. This was repetition disguised as destiny. That realization doesn't come easily. It comes through friction, through the collapse of illusions, through the silent comparison they start making in their mind between the version of themselves they were becoming with you and the version they're forced to remain within the karmic bond. You awakened something. You called forward a future. And no matter how hard they try to silence that voice, it rises when they're alone. Because the soul remembers. Even if the ego denies it, the spirit never forgets its point of alignment. And the truth they thought they left behind? It begins to chase them. But here's what most people don't see. You, chosen one, were never truly waiting. You were being refined. What looked like silence was actually sacred preparation. While they chased what looked shiny, you were anchoring into something eternal. And now, the tables are turning. What they once overlooked is becoming rare. What they once dismissed is becoming magnetic. And they don't know how to process that shift because they still want the comfort of illusion, but they're starting to crave the gravity of truth. That craving becomes a burden when they realize they may no longer have access to what they once walked away from so casually. The plot twist begins when your elevation becomes visible, when your healing becomes undeniable, when the people who once doubted you start speaking your name with reverence. That's when they feel it. Not just jealousy, but a soul-level grief. Because what they see now is not just your glow. It's the consequence of their decision. And nothing haunts a soul more than the realization that they were once trusted with something sacred and chose to mishandle it. The truth isn't just returning. It's echoing, loud enough to shake their peace, soft enough to sound like your voice. You are not the same person they walked away from. And that's part of the ache. They realize they don't even know you anymore. The you they betrayed has become the you they admire from afar. But admiration doesn't grant access. Not anymore. That part of the story is over. And now the universe is making that boundary visible. Not out of punishment, but out of protection. Because what was once denied in you is now being honored by life itself. Doors are opening, alignments are forming, and your name is being spoken in rooms they will never enter. This is where the reversal completes its first cycle. The one who once had the upper hand now finds themselves haunted by the silence they once took for weakness. They remember the way you loved. They remember the depth of your presence, but most of all, they remember the look in your eyes when you knew, before they ever confessed, that they were choosing someone else. That moment replays in their spirit, not because they feel guilty, but because they finally understand what was lost. And that realization is irreversible. And the most divine part of this twist is that you don't need to prove anything. You don't need to gloat or announce your evolution. The frequency speaks for itself. Truth doesn't beg to be recognized. It simply shines. And that light is now surrounding you. The same light they ran from is the light they now crave. But spiritual laws are clear. Timing is sacred. And what is missed in one season must be earned in the next. That's the weight they must carry now. The knowledge that the door may never open again. You see, chosen one, not every rejection is meant to be healed. Some are meant to be understood. Some losses carry codes, not of failure, but of redirection. And what felt like betrayal was actually a portal. It stripped away every illusion you once held about love, about loyalty, about being seen, and it forced you to stand alone in your essence. That solitude was sacred. It wasn't loneliness. It was refinement. It was the fire that burned away every version of you that needed to be chosen in order to feel worthy. And now you've become someone who doesn't chase presence. You embody it. That's what shifts timelines. That's what makes the plot twist possible. The irony is, they thought they were escaping discomfort, but the true discomfort was never you. It was the mirror you held. Because being in your presence required responsibility. It required integrity, and integrity is painful for a soul that still lives off of performance. They didn't reject love, they rejected accountability. And now, the karmic bond they chose is holding up a mirror with no filter. That mirror doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter. It shows them who they are when there's no one left to impress. And what they see now, they can't unsee. Because truth, once revealed, becomes a weight that no distraction can carry. You, on the other hand, are learning to honor yourself in ways no external validation ever gave you. You stopped waiting for someone to return what they never had, the you capacity to hold. And in that decision, you didn't just reclaim your power, you reclaimed your soul. This isn't about becoming bitter or cold. This is about becoming whole. Wholeness doesn't scream. It doesn't seek revenge. It simply radiates. And your radiance is not loud, but it is unmistakable. They feel it, even when they pretend not to. Even when they tell themselves it's too late. Because something in them knows. Your silence is not distance, it's elevation. There's a reason why spiritual law never permits a sacred one to be exchanged without consequence. The divine always recalibrates. And now, as that law plays out in real time, you're being reminded that your worth was never lost, only hidden beneath the illusion of being unwanted. But rejection is often divine redirection disguised as loss. It reroutes you from what was misaligned and positions you for what your spirit actually deserves. And what you deserve is not just love, it's alignment, it's expansion, it's connection with someone who sees your soul and doesn't flinch. And now that you're standing in this higher frequency, you no longer need closure because you've become the closure. Your growth closed the chapter they refused to finish. Your clarity sealed what they left open. You no longer wait for the apology, the explanation, the confession. Because you see it now, everything they didn't say was already a message, and everything they tried to hide is now being exposed by the fruit of your transformation. You are the proof, not of what they lost, but of what you found within yourself when everything external fell apart. The pain was real. The grief was heavy. But the reward is clarity. You now see the patterns for what they were, spiritual loops disguised as love stories. You've outgrown the need to be chosen by people who are still choosing their wounds. And that growth comes with grief, yes, but it also comes with freedom. The freedom to never settle for anything that dims your light. The freedom to walk away, not in anger, but in awareness. And when you walk in awareness, you attract differently. You speak differently. You even breathe differently. Because alignment changes everything. And this alignment isn't loud or showy. It's sacred. It's the quiet confidence that doesn't need to explain itself. It's the peace that doesn't beg to be understood. And it's that peace they now feel from a distance and long to touch again. But peace can't be faked. It can only be earned through truth. And the truth is, they chose delay over destiny. They chose illusion over intimacy. And while you have made peace with that, they are still trying to outrun it. That's the difference. You healed. They hid, and now the hiding has become too heavy to bear. You didn't just survive what they did, you transcended it. And that's what they never saw coming. They thought leaving you would diminish your light, that their absence would somehow strip you of your identity. But it didn't. It sharpened you. It deepened you. It carved out parts of you that were dormant, waiting for this exact season to be activated. Sometimes it takes abandonment to reveal authority. Sometimes it takes silence to awaken power. And now, every step you take radiates the energy of someone who no longer needs to be seen to know they are chosen. Because you finally see yourself. And what you see now is not just the person you've become, but the person you've always been. Before the confusion, before the heartbreak, before the rejection, there was a deeper self, buried beneath the desire to be accepted. That self has returned, stronger, wiser, clearer. You no longer carry the energy of someone waiting to be picked. You carry the posture of someone who remembers their purpose. That posture doesn't chase validation. It doesn't lower itself to be recognized. It simply walks forward and lets truth do the talking. This is the part of the journey where the memory no longer stings, where the name no longer triggers emotion, where the story is no longer something you feel trapped in. It becomes a chapter in a book you're no longer reading. The karmic cycle that once tried to entangle your soul no longer holds authority. You're not tied to what they chose. You're tied to what God preserved. And that preservation wasn't passive. It was divine strategy. It pulled you back to launch you forward. It let them go so you could finally return to yourself. And now, standing in that truth, you understand that forgiveness was never about letting them off the hook. It was about releasing the energy that kept you connected to a frequency no longer aligned with your purpose. You've forgiven not because you forget, but because your healing no longer depends on their recognition. You've made peace with the unanswered questions. You've let go of the imaginary endings. And that release, that surrender, has created space for something real, for something divine, for something that doesn't make you shrink to be loved. This is what restoration looks like. Not perfection, not performance, but peace, real peace. The kind that doesn't rise and fall with other people's choices. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything. You carry it now, in your voice, in your posture, in your energy, and even from a distance. They feel it. They sense the shift. They witness the glow. But that glow is not for them. It's not an invitation to return. It's a signal to the universe that you're finally ready to receive what aligns with your wholeness, not your wounds. You are no longer seeking repair through others. You've become the restoration. So here you are, not broken, but rebuilt, not bitter, but awakened, not waiting to be chosen, but finally walking in the awareness that you were never meant to fit into spaces that feared your light. What they chose doesn't define you. What they lost doesn't limit you. The real plot twist is not that they might want you back. It's that you no longer need them to feel whole. You've become the closure, the elevation, the proof that healing is louder than betrayal. And now, as this story finds its final breath, there is only one thing left to say. Your rise was never about revenge. It was about remembrance. You remembered who you are, and that changed everything. If this message resonated with something real within your soul, write in the comments, "I carry the light they couldn't hold." And if you haven't already, please like the video and subscribe to the channel and stick with us. because what comes next is for the version of you that refuses to shrink back. You are no longer who you were when they left. You are more. You are divine. You are home. I also want to give a special thanks to everyone who supports our channel. If you want to help us keep producing content, you can support us through our Buy Me a Coffee. Just click the link in the first pinned comment. And before you go, don't forget to watch the video we recommend here on the screen or the playlist. The Secrets of the Chosen. Each video was made with you in mind so that you can continue to grow spiritually. Thank you for being with us. May God bless you abundantly. And remember, your journey is just beginning, and the best is yet to come.